After LucasArts had that success with the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter series of PC games, LucasArts just went from strength to strength in establishing what we now call the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Over the next decade, we'd see comic books, novels, video games, all crossing over with each other to tell a story much bigger than 3 movies could possibly imagine. Star Wars Dark Forces was released for DOS and Mac in 1995 and ported to the PlayStation the following year. LucasArts originally had the idea of an FPS where players could play as Luke Skywalker, but they scrapped that, and so instead Dark Forces introduces us to Kyle Katarn and his partner in crime, Jan Ors. Katarn is a defected Imperial stormtrooper turned mercenary, selling his services to the highest bidder. Straight away, what a great character to bring into Star Wars. I mean, he's even edgier than Han Solo, and after having successfully stolen the Death Star plans in the opening level, Kyle is again hired by the Alliance, this time to infiltrate and disrupt an Imperial cell who are developing super battle droids known as the Dark Troopers. On this adventure, Kyle will end up getting captured by Jabba the Hutt. He'll end up rescuing General Crix Maydean. This helps to anchor the story of Dark Forces into the Star Wars universe. Dark Forces came out 2 years after Doom. It was bemoaned immediately on release as being another Doom clone. Dark Forces ran on LucasArts' own in-house 3D engine called the Jedi engine. The Jedi engine actually allowed for a far more 3D experience than Doom ever could have. Unlike in Doom, players could look up and down, they could duck, they could jump. This doesn't sound like much now, but this was groundbreaking at the time. Also, the game's level design took that into account and had these far more vertical levels. The ray-casted environments also contained real 3D geometry, as well as environmental shaders, and Dark Forces even had its own original score. Dark Forces made one hell of a splash when it came out. It sold nearly 1 million copies over its lifetime, almost making it into the top 10 selling PC games of the 90s. Dark Forces remains one of my all-time favourite Star Wars games, and even today its impact is well remembered. After all that critical and financial impact, LucasArts obviously wanted to follow up as soon as possible, and Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight followed along in late 1997. The FPS genre had changed considerably in the 2 years since Dark Forces, and once again, LucasArts had built their own in-house 3D engine, much more powerful than before. This time the engine was called the Sith engine. Sith was competing against powerful 3D engines of the time like ID's Quake, and so it had to have the chops to compete in a market which by now was getting very crowded. In 1997, a lot of FPSs was still sprite based, but Sith was full 3D, using polygonal characters over sprites, full 3D environments and supporting mouse look. Sith supported hardware acceleration and was one of the first engines ever to support Direct 3D. Once again, we're playing as Kyle Katarn alongside his partner Jan Ors. The story is set after the original film trilogy. The Death Star's been destroyed. Darth Vader and the Emperor are dead. The power vacuum left behind from that, though, has allowed this sect of Dark Jedi to come out of nowhere and go on a bit of a Sith crusade. Jarek, the leader of these Dark Jedi, captured and murdered Kyle's father to find out the location of the Valley of the Jedi. After Kyle finds out, he picks up his very first lightsaber and starts a quest of revenge. As the game goes on, Kyle starts to develop force powers which the player can upgrade between levels. The game has 2 endings depending on whether the player chooses to focus on the light or the dark side. Full motion cutscenes move the story along between levels, something which LucasArts had previously attempted in Rebel Assault 2. The cutscenes themselves, interestingly enough, include the first lightsaber footage filmed since Return of the Jedi in 1983. The game was tremendously well received, both for the single player and also the new online multiplayer, which gamers had noticed was sorely lacking in Dark Forces. A few months later, LucasArts followed Dark Forces 2 with the full expansion, Jedi Knight Mysteries of the Sith. Well into 1998, LucasArts were now competing against Quake 2 and Unreal. And with Half-Life just over the horizon, LucasArts updated the Sith engine to include coloured lighting and added a few extra tweaks to help sell the game. Set after the good ending of Dark Forces 2, Kyle Katarn has now taken on his own troubled apprentice, Mara Jade. Mysteries of the Sith has some of the most significant crossovers with the expanded universe. This is the only time Mara Jade appears as a playable character in a Star Wars game. The planet Droman Kars goes on to also be a very significant planet, both in the Legends continuity, but also in the Old Republic timeline. The game also features Jedi holocrons, Vornskirs and Nogri, which are all now beginning to turn up in the Rebels TV show. In my review of Mysteries of the Sith, I said that I actually preferred it to Jedi Knight, and it was fairly well received in its day. The story is fantastic, and the way that it weaves into the expanded universe is second to none. The attention to continuity across all these different platforms, it's just what makes me love Star Wars, man. The third full game in the series is called Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. Dropping the Dark Forces moniker completely, Jedi Knight 2's development was outsourced to Raven Software, one of the first instances of LucasArts recruiting development from outside the ranch. Powered by ID's Quake 3 Arena engine, Jedi Outcast's lightsaber combat is what separates it from everything else. Up until this point, lightsabers in video games just felt like big glowing bats. Jedi Knight though, it made it feel like you were truly controlling a more elegant weapon from a more civilized age. After the whole Valley of the Jedi thing and the whole Sith Temple thing, Kyle has had enough of the Force at this point. He's gone back to being a mercenary with Jan Ors. Unfortunately, the Force wasn't done with him, and he's brought kicking and screaming back into the fight between the Jedi and the Sith. And he comes back swinging, enraged and out for revenge. In a similar way to Jedi Knight, Jedi Knight 2 features upgradable Force powers. This time, Kyle's powers, they unlock with no decision making on behalf of the player. Kyle once again develops light side powers like Force Heal and Mind Trick, but he also learns Force Lightning. He learns how to choke people, Darth Vader style. Jedi Knight 2 is easily the best story in any Star Wars game. Raven did a tremendous job of framing a flawed human Jedi, and voice actor Jeff Bennett delivers a great performance. Kyle's anger is always just bubbling below the surface.
My anger is all I have left. Anger and revenge.
Jedi Knight 2 was released on PC, but it was also ported to the Xbox and GameCube, and it smashed reviews on all formats. Still referred to by many as the best Star Wars game ever, the lightsaber combat and the story is what stuck in reviewers' minds then, and it's what gamers still rave about now. Jedi Knight 2 for me is the Star Wars equivalent of Deus Ex. Now that I've mentioned it, someone will reinstall it. Following from the success of Jedi Outcast, LucasArts gave Raven 1 year to develop a sequel. Powered by the same engine as its predecessor, Jedi Knight Jedi Academy had a focus on customization and player agency. Kyle Katarn is not playable at any point in Jedi Academy. Instead, he teaches Jedi Academy's protagonist, Jade and Core, in the ways of the Force. And when Jaden discovers a new Sith cult is harvesting darkside energy, Katarn joins his protege on missions around the galaxy. Expanded universe locations like Beerus and Bakura feature as playable locations. Most significantly though is the final mission to Korriban. First mentioned in the Dark Horse comics, Korriban is now one of the most significant planets in Star Wars lore, and I'm pretty sure that its first video game appearance is here in Jedi Academy. The player agency in Jedi Academy was well received when it was released, with players able to customize their look, choose from a variety of lightsaber styles, as well as develop their own character over the course of the game. The ability to wield the saber staff or dual sabers for the first time in a video game blew a lot of gamers away, and this keeps people coming back to the game even today. The story was a bit of a letdown, the final boss in particular being a little bit like a Scooby-Doo villain. From a technical standpoint though, Jedi Academy is probably the most well-realised lightsaber game ever made. Nothing since has captured the variety and the depth of gameplay that was on offer in Jedi Academy. A fitting end to the series, but maybe a shame that we've not seen any more. The Jedi Knight series was of a consistently high quality, and it survived the jump to consoles, something which had killed off other Star Wars series. There was a planned Jedi Knight 3, but suffice to say LucasArts entered into a period of uncertainty for the next few years, with external development being scaled back and the focus being moved squarely off of Star Wars. Regardless, Kyle Katarn's story remains one of the shining lights of the expanded universe. The first 2 Dark Forces games are novelised in 3 parts by William C. Dietz, with Kyle going on to play a very significant role in the new Jedi Order books. Similarly, Mara Jade is a massive part of the Legends continuity, as significant a character as Han or Leia in her own right. This series of games proved that a good story and the richness of the Star Wars universe was enough to make a great video game. It will always be remembered by me personally as my favourite series of Star Wars games, and if you haven't played it, then I recommend you start at the beginning. Every game is worth your time. Thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for letting me talk about my favourite Star Wars games. If you'd like to see more videos based around Star Wars and Star Wars gaming, then please subscribe to The Game Show.